3. That's nice. Good evening. I'd like to call the Lincoln Way 210 Board of Education meeting for August 18th, 2025 to order. Please stand for the pledge if you're able. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can you please call the roll?
Dana Berthold.
Here.
Catherine Johnson.
Here.
Joseph Kostick.
Here.
Richard Lacine.
Present.
Caitlin Olenek.
Here.
Deidre Stokes. Aaron Janik.
Here. We have no public comments, or nobody signed up for public comments tonight. And with that, we'll move into the presentation for the fiscal year 2026 tentative budget.
All right, good evening. I'm pleased to present to you this evening fiscal year 2026 budget in tentative form. As you know, school districts are required to present their annual budgets and place them on public display. After 30 days, we'll hold a hearing, during which I will highlight any refinements and allow for public comment. The board can then adopt the final budget for the year. The budget's part of a strategic process that includes analysis of district programs, staffing reviews, and long-term debt strategies. Once a budget is adopted by the board, it will be incorporated into a financial forecast to ensure future financial stability. During tonight's presentation, I will provide an overview of revenues and expenditures planned for the 2025-2026 school year. I may not speak to every budget line during this presentation, but I will highlight any noteworthy changes from last year. Please feel free to ask any questions along the way, and if it requires me to bring any further information back to the board next month, I'll make sure to speak to that item while presenting those refinements. Finally, this year in particular, as you can see on this slide, I will address later in the presentation a few capital equipment items and the start of our life safety spending as a part of this budget. I do like to briefly discuss how our district receives its revenues. I know you all have seen this slide before, but I like to include it in the presentation. While some school districts and communities rely heavily on state and federal financial support, Lincoln Way is funded primarily by our local sources, specifically by our taxpayers. Local property tax receipts represent about 70% of our annual revenue as an organization. For fiscal year 2026, or the 2025-26 school year, local revenues are expected to increase this year about 3.6%. As is always true, the tax levy will be based on CPI growth and any additional revenues coming from new properties. One piece I do want to highlight on local revenue is CPPRT. You do hear me talk about that each year. PPRT, or personal property replacement tax, those are revenues we receive as replacement revenues from the state that were lost when the power to impose personal property taxes on businesses was abolished. And so after COVID, we saw a huge upswing in this revenue line item. We've seen several years of decline. So fiscal year 23, this was $2.1 million. This is not a small budget line. It was $2.1 million in fiscal year 23. It was down $800,000 to be $1.3 million the next year, and then down to $860,000 the year after that. So finally, the state seems to have stabilized this budget line, and I do want to make note of that. As for state revenues, our evidence-based funding has increased, but much more modestly. Last year, our evidence-based funding went up almost $2 million as we remained a Tier 1 district. We have been floating on that edge between Tier 1 and Tier 2, meaning per the state calculations, we were an underfunded district. Now, however, we are moving across that cusp into Tier 2. So our increase this year in EBF is only 2.4%, which is less than CPI. To me, that's a big deal because that's only 2.4% on about a $13 million allocation. So, and as I said before, since we rely so heavily on our local taxpayers, we take everything that we can get in terms of state allocations to alleviate that local burden. Finally, federal revenues are expected to decrease this year. Part of that has to do with districts, not just Lincoln Way, all districts no longer receiving or spending any of that ESSER ARP money. But then also, our federal grant allocations are less than what they were last year. So for the first time, we're seeing decreases in the IDEA grant, which is for special education, Title I for low income, Title II for teacher professional development. Those are all lower than last year, totaling a little bit over a $200,000 reduction. We are still waiting for other allocations to be released, for example, in the career and tech ed areas. I have budgeted for them conservatively, but I'll bring updates next month to the final budget. Switching over to how the district spends its money each year, by far the majority of our costs, as you know, are salaries and benefits that we pay to our employees. Those typically range anywhere when combined between 70 and 75% of our operating costs each year. Our business and HR teams do a really nice job detailing this information, and I am pleased to say I wanted to highlight tonight that last year's spending on salaries and benefits was within 0.3% of what was originally budgeted in September. And that accuracy is credit not to me, it's credit to our staff in the administrative annex who help our administration, help myself, help Kelly, Dr. Murphy, so that we have good information from which we can estimate costs for the upcoming year. So I do want to take that opportunity to thank our business and HR teams in the annex building. Salaries and benefits are tentatively budgeted at $87.4 million, which represents about a 4.4% increase in the aggregate. As is typical, we settle into the school year. Any staffing changes or updates to salaries and or benefits will be incorporated into the final version of the budget presented in September. In the middle of this slide, purchase services and supplies, not as much to talk about this year, relatively stable, reasonable increases. Our vocational ed program continues to grow, CTE, welding, auto in those areas, and so we do have a little bit of an uptick in supply needs there. Tech equipment needs are in line with Cheryl's long-term planning, and utilities predictions are based on Chuck and my work and our review of the indices and contracts that we have with our broker. At the bottom, tuition, dues, and fees, that's a budget category that I do want to highlight for a moment. In fiscal year 2026, we've budgeted a higher increase in this area. Private facility tuition costs are projected to be up more than $300,000. I believe that's conservative, but that budget line is very student dependent. You can have one student move in, and if we can't meet their services here in one of our home schools and they need to be placed elsewhere, that tuition can often be very expensive. And so I do believe it's conservative, but we want to leave some room for those situations to arise. And then our new Director of Special Services, Katie, and I, as she begins her time here in Lincoln Way, this is a line item that we want to review together. Secondly, and the other bullet point there, District 843 costs are expected to be up anywhere from 7.5% to 11% of what we pay for the cooperative. Later in the agenda this evening, there's an action item for board consideration to approve the 843 budget this year. And if you look in your packet materials under that agenda item, I did attach a one-page memo that sort of highlights my read on that budget. There are some areas that are relatively flat for District 843. There are other areas, going from memory, their salaries and benefits are up over 11%. So that's going to be hard for us to plan for if that high of a trend continues. Additionally, they did end, being District 843, ended more than 3% over budget last year, which is why I've allowed for a little bit of padding if they go over again. That's an area we'll keep looking at in terms of overall cost, as well as digging into specifics like special ed transportation and some analyses on per student cost. So that brings us to the big picture. You can see here the three columns, orange, blue, and red, for the last 2 years, and then fiscal year 26. Operating revenues on the whole are budgeted at roughly a 3% increase. Operating expenses are just under 5.5% increase, which I am confident is conservative. As you look toward the bottom of the table, I want to point out a couple of rows, if you don't mind taking a look at the category that reads Other Operating Uses toward the bottom. And in the red column, which shows fiscal year 26, you can see a transfer amount of $3,138,000. The $138,000 is just one of the payments to pay off the debt certificate that we use to buy buses. So that's a smaller amount and not much else to say there. But the remaining $3 million is this year's capital improvements transfer. That's the amount that we usually earmark as we plan for fall bids, winter board approvals, and we gear up for next summer. This year, as you know, we're already coming this fall, and we'll be going to bid for the life safety HVAC work to be completed in the summers of 2026 and 2027. Spoke with our architects today. All the spec work and drawings are on pace, and our district team has a meeting with DLA this Thursday to review where we are and plan next steps. And I say all this because it's already going to be a very busy summer. But that being said, other work still has to get done around the district besides HVAC work. And so hopefully I will be able to get this $3 million budget line a bit higher when I bring the final budget back in September and bring it in line with the past few years. Finally, underneath that number, I'd like to highlight the net change in operating fund balance that you see below it. As you recall, in June, we received all of the bond proceeds from the life safety bonds and the debt certificate for the buses. What that means is all the cash was received in June. It was received and recorded in last fiscal year. So that has nothing to do with this fiscal year now on paper. However, we only cut a check for half of the amount to buy those buses in June. So we had the other half to pay this fiscal year. That was intentional. I think our auditors might not have been thrilled if we paid for the buses in full before they were all on site and received and inspected. So that being said, we'll now pay for the other half this year. So we need to cut a $2.8 million check. You see that actually in the invoices in your packet materials tonight. But what that does is it creates a one-time operating deficit on paper. That was planned for. It is not a compounding issue, and that was intentional just until we got the buses. When you remove that payment, we have an approximate $2.2 million operating surplus. And remember, we built our fund balances up with those bond proceeds exactly for this process to unfold. With that, very bottom right-hand corner, we project ending the year with just over $42 million in operating funds, which represents almost 34%, 33.6% fund balance, keeping us in line with the board's Fund Balance Policy 420. There are several areas I'll continue to monitor between now and next month's meeting. The list on this slide is not exhaustive, obviously. Just includes a few items. For example, our Transportation Director, Mr. Reeser, and I will be sitting down and reviewing these new vehicles and how that process unfolded to determine when the next set of leases comes up if we want to repeat that process in terms of financing and purchasing to reduce those costs long term. With that, I believe I've hit the noteworthy areas. The slide right here is my last slide. It summarizes fund by fund, and you can see that we maintain a 33.6% operating fund balance. It's tough to condense a $162 million budget in that amount of time, so I do thank you for the time and opportunity to review it. I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Dr. Dubek? I have a couple for you. The consideration of another bus purchasing round, when would you be bringing that back to us?
Last year, we wanted to get out in September, October. I think our timeline was October, November. And it seemed to work out in terms of the bidding process. We were able to receive a guarantee by July 1. Not all the buses came by July 1, I will tell you. So Andy and Jose and their team, they received them all on time. Everything was good. We installed everything. My preference would be probably informational September and then October, just to give us that extra month and get ahead of it a little bit.
So we're up again on this year or next year?
We have, how many buses coming off lease? 37? 37. So this would be the third of 3 groupings, and then we would have some years off where we wouldn't be buying any.
And we're confirming the repeated issuance, the in and out on that. We're gonna be matched up with, when we originally started this, we were gonna make sure everybody's in for the term of.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we wouldn't move forward with the buses without knowing that the IGAs were sound. Yep, I agree.
In terms of the life safety spending, the timing of it all, I know we're going out to bid next month.
Mhm.
Do we anticipate trying to accelerate any of the work being done just to avoid any potential issues with tariffs or anything like that with, buying components from overseas for our companies?
I would say I'll know more information after our conversation on Thursday. And just so you all know, any sort of budget figure I put in a non-operating fund like that, you can see $4 million spent by June 30th. We had earmarked the bulk of the funds to be spent next summer. Do I know exactly what will come pre-June 30 versus post? No. So just do know that that's an estimate that's sort of a little bit nebulous. But Aaron, after our conversation this week and as we start to go out to bid, obviously the sooner the better from our vantage point. But
Quite a bit of that work will not be able to be done while the building's occupied. That'll be the challenge, because with some of the roof units, so I'm guessing most of this will be a summer project. So it'll be very interesting to see in September what those bids come back. Very good point.
So in that life safety, then you said there's gonna be another bid package, not part of life safety? The other stuff that needs to get done here?
Correct.
What is the timing of that bid?
TBD. So first, we need to know how much we have in this budget cycle, and then what we typically have done through August and September is kind of, once we know what we can work with budgetarily, because we don't want to overspend, right? You guys transfer the money as part of the budget. So Scott, Chuck, and myself and the architects will sit and prioritize projects. We'll bring that back next month with more information for you. Any lead times, we'll try to get out to bid as soon as we can.
So
It'll be October. Short answer, it'll be October.
Right.
I mean, it'll be
So-
September, we'll get the number of what we have. We have compiled a list that we'll bring back to share with you in September, October, of here are some of the priorities coming from the different buildings. And so the goal would then be to get out in October. Now, obviously, from a parking lot perspective, we're pretty caught up. From a roofing perspective, we might do one this coming summer, and we'd be able to get that out in October, November. But the other things will not be mechanical in nature.
Right.
So we'll have those ready once we get this final dollar amount, but we certainly want to be out to bid prior to the start of the new year.
So where I'm going with this is if we can create a list of bus dues, if we do them as an alternate to the HVAC project, you might get them really cheap. I mean, it might save us, you're eliminating a whole other contractor coming in.
Yeah.
You're using on-staff people that are doing the we could just make it
If
an
it's in the
alternate. to
mechanical
each-
stuff, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
make it an alternate to that contract, and then if it's within what we think our budget is, just,
Yeah.
it would.
It fit, yeah. No, that's a good
It
point.
might save us some money.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if there'll be, this is taking care of almost all of our mechanical issues at this time, but we'll certainly bring that up in our meeting on Thursday with the architects. Yeah, that's a good point.
Any further questions? Oh,
Well,
go ahead,
at a
Rich.
minimum, it would at least tell us what it's gonna be.
Sure.
But you'd be
Give us an idea.
surprised, like that little add-on stuff,
Yeah.
you're just, I don't wanna
They've
call it
already
free
got
money. I
people
don't wanna
here.
call, yeah, there,
Yes.
it's just, it really, that alternate stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anything else for Dr. Dubak? Well, definitely a good budget, we've come a long way, a lot easier to look at, make decisions on, so. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We have items D1 through D6. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So, second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. This vote is unanimous. Motion passes.
Next up, we have presentation of invoices for June 27th through August 18th, 2025.
Motion to approve invoices in the amount of $12,696,369 for June and July 2022, 2025, sorry.
We can approve those two. Probably should pay them now. So that motion is through 2025, Joe?
Yeah, I corrected myself, thanks.
Right. We have a motion, we have a second.
Made me say a lot of numbers in one
We have
sentence.
a motion and a second. Any questions on the invoices?
Energy is high, electricity, right?
And that's 2 months' worth as
Yeah.
well. But yeah, and as you can see, I know we've brought the utilities contract, you can see it in the informational part. Year over year now, electricity remains high, but it's at least stable from a budget standpoint. Natural gas is what's been going up. So Chuck and I are watching that close.
The final pay for the mechanical replacement project, what was that? The AMS, the large one, 208,000?
Yeah, that was a punch list that was held
Okay,
for a pay app, excuse me, held by DLA for a long time until they were satisfied with punch list items.
okay. Any further questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. Can you please open the vote? It's open. Thank you.
The motion is unanimous. Passes.
All right, next up is the treasurer's report for June 2025.
In June, revenues totaled $95.1 million. With those bond proceeds, expenses were $17.2 million. Total cash balance on June 30 was $95.2 million. Through June 30th, 100.3% of budgeted operating revenues were received and 98.3% of budgeted spending occurred prior to closing the year. Overall, operating revenues and expenses trended appropriately. Some invoices, purchase service invoices in the Ed Fund, for example, were received and paid after July 1st, which brought down our budget to actual there. Through June, district's investment rates continued to hold steady, just over 4%. With cash reserves being at a high point now, one question I can imagine you might be asking is how we're investing that money. So I'm working with PMA. We're laddering those out. The bills that you just approved were a high amount, obviously, for July and August. So we're factoring in some of that as well. And as discussed at last month's board meeting, life safety bond proceeds will be tracked separately for transparency purposes. So when I give my investment report, you'll see a page for everything else, and then you'll see a page for the life safety proceeds. District administration continues to collaborate with PMA in terms of rates of return and cash flow. I did include a municipal market update for you from PMA. I think it was issued on the 15th, if I remember right, and it speaks to anticipated delays in Fed rate cuts. And so if they're going to hold those rates steady for a longer period of time, that should bolster our investment returns for fiscal year 26. That's all I have.
Any questions on the treasurer's report? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. The vote is unanimous. Motion passes.
Next up, we have the student activities report for June 2025 and July 2025.
For June, the month ended, the fund balance was $2,475,509 with revenues of $583,895 and expenditures of $527,027. At the end of June, the only items that were still in the negative were girls lacrosse and boys tennis at East. Everything else was cleared up by the end of June. For July, month ended July 31st, the fund balance was $2,756,109 with revenues of $594,853 and expenditures of $314,252. The only remaining here, we have Rose Bowl and we have girls lacrosse. Girls lacrosse, there was a transfer done today through paid for uniforms. They had paid it out of their student activity account. We then paid for the general ledger. That was a timing thing. Girls lacrosse is a district program, so Mr. Ward had to get everybody else to pitch in. And so that's been paid. And then the Rose Bowl is an account for transportation through the marching band. Did I say that right, Kelly? I believe so.
Yeah, it's used for other fundraising and then just the direct expenses, the fundraising expenses and other expenses related to the fund, related to the Rose Bowl.
Rose Bowl.
There was a portion of, a bill, portion of a bill should have gone through the marching band account, but instead all of it went through the Rose Bowl account.
Okay.
And at the time, I knew that there needed to be a change, but I also knew that at the end of the day, whatever was left in the Rose Bowl fund was gonna get absorbed by
The
marching
marching band.
band. So now, marching band will just be $2,785 less. So we'll make that transfer in our permit in August. You'll see Rose Bowl closed out and, the marching band balance will just be $2,785 less.
Perfect. So everything else, we're good as we head into fall sports season.
All right. Any questions on the student activities report? Is the Rose Bowl going to do any big fundraisers? I know they had a,
No, there are no big trips this year.
Oh,
No big trips this year.
all right. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the student activities report as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. Vote is unanimous, motion passes.
Next up is the District 843 fiscal year 2026 budget.
So this is a formality, but something that all the participating districts do need to pass annually. We put the budget form in here for your review. We also then have kind of an evaluation, an overview of what we see in terms of the increases from that last year. And this is something over the next couple of years we'll have to continue to analyze. These are significant increases while our level of students remain relatively the same. They had some challenges last year securing buses and some different things that we discussed. But I did want to, Mike and I wanted to provide an overview for the board of just some of those highlights or changes. I've discussed those with Sarah, the other members of the 843, and it's something that we'll have to continue to work through, just like we continue to work through our own budgeting process. Mike, anything to add? Okay. But we did put a overview in there for your review.
Dana, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. We did have the budget discussion at our last meeting for the tentative budget presentation as well. And some of the pieces that we're looking at is revisiting utilities and looking and monitoring the cost of the utilities that are being used. Obviously, as Mike stated, the difference in cost sometimes can be one paraprofessional being added or a whole person coming in for an added nursing position. Some of the other costs that have started to increase are the costs of any contract services, so trying to bring on board. We've had to make some of those adjustments in salaries and benefits to try and keep and, actually acquire qualified staff that are part of the 843 organization, not just contractually, because the contractual individuals have not been the highest quality, and we want to have those people on site to be able to train them and teach them and then retain them. So some of those costs were necessary. We also don't currently have the S fund costs calculated because the state has not yet released the amount or the percentage of S fund reimbursement that would come back for any students that attend public facilities. So that could bring down some of the costs once we find that out, but it's been approved. Pioneer Grove has been approved as one of those sites.
Correct.
So once those costs come in, that could help decrease some of those. And then also as the student numbers increase, we have signed some agreements with different districts that have not typically used the co-op for services. So that's good that hopefully they see the value in that and will bring some of their additional students, which could bring the cost down for other districts as well. That was it.
Thanks, Dana.
Mhm.
Any questions on the 843 budget?
No questions, but am I right to assume, based on the tone of what you said, moving forward past this year, that we might be looking at these double-digit increases for next year or two after that, potentially?
We just, one of the
I
things.
mean, I
we
know
need-
nobody has a crystal ball, but.
No, and it's not
The
only that.
world we live in,
It's
right,
not only
yeah.
that, we're gonna have to really look closely at programming. One of the unique things about this cooperative, for the junior highs, they're kind of sharing the programs and sharing the cost.
Sure.
We're the only high school standalone district in the cooperative. There have been times where there would be some students from Lockport or other places, but right now, we're kind of standalone. If we had a building and we had the space, we would have our own programming right now. You know, as many of you are aware, we used to run all of our transition, or a majority of our transition through 843. We've taken that back. We had Bridges, which was our alternative setting for our IEP students. We've done that ourselves. So our only usage at this time is Pioneer Grove, and I want to say we're at 22 to 24 students right now, right there in that ballpark. We don't have the space for that right
Sure.
now, but at some point, as we continue to evaluate, that's one of our goals in our strategic plan is to look at these programs just to see if that would make more sense for us long term. We've analyzed, we've kind of done a higher level look at the transportation component of that, and that's something that we are going to dive a little deeper in and look at again this year. You know, with our new director having different types of experiences in dealing with that's more beneficial for us to look at. You know, we run all of their transportation through our site now anyway. But that's something that we'll continue to evaluate here over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add to that, some of the decisions regarding salary and benefits and staffing were made prior to knowing the outcome of the transportation agreements.
Sure,
that
absolutely.
We had that
Yes.
discussion first and then found out about the lease issues that we were having and having to purchase all those.
And that
buses.
also speaks to that timing
Correct.
of, you know, we were out in October, and we'll look to do that again, and those were discussions we had as superintendents with 843 of, in today's market, you almost have to be 7, 8, 9 months out to have those discussions. It is a tough market right now in the lease, the transportation leasing. So we'll continue to do our due diligence and work through that. It's a good question, though.
Any further discussion or questions on the 843 budget? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the District 843 budget for fiscal year 2026 as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. This vote is unanimous. Motion passes.
Next up, we have the establishment of the fiscal year 2026 budget hearing date.
We'd ask that the board approve the resolution number 2025-06 as presented, and then we will post the appropriate notice in the newspapers.
Can I get a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 budget hearing date as presented?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, can you please open the vote?
Voting is open. Vote is unanimous. Motion passes.
All All right, next up, under informational items, is the report of Lincoln Way Special Education District 843 Governing Board meetings held July 22nd, 2025.
Not much additional to add, just extended school year is wrapping up, and, well, it has wrapped up now. And all of the work that the districts had done to make sure students were attending and confirming that was super helpful, that those those numbers were accurate. So we didn't have a lot of excess planning or excess funds being set aside for students who weren't actually going to attend at the co-op. So thank you to everyone.
We have the FOIA requests.
FOIA requests are in your backup material. I'd do my best to answer any questions that you may have.
Buildings and ground report.
Once again, also included in your backup materials, thanks to Rich and his team to continue to provide those each month.
Next up is first reading for policies.
First reading are included in your backup materials. This will bring this back for consideration for approval in September.
Legislative report.
Nothing earth-shaking to report at this time. We'll continue to monitor, what's going on with the federal funding, but as Dr. Duback said, we really don't rely that much on it. And then it looks like we'll get our money from the state this year. I will continue to be kind of nervous going forward, but for now, for this year, it looks like we'll be okay.
Anything from the superintendent?
Start with students tomorrow. Had a good day of Institute tomorrow. Look forward to welcoming our students back to school starting tomorrow.
And any other district business? It looks like I have to assign 2 board members to review closed session minutes. So Ms. Stokes will be one, and Catherine, you'll be the other, because you did not get the memo to wear the black polo. Makes it easy. So thank you for taking care of that for us. Nothing under correspondence. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session
So moved.
for the purposes I was going to announce, which would be the employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of employee, collective negotiating, and litigation.
Student-related matters.
Student-related matters as well.
Thank you.
My motion stands.
Joe's motion stands. We have a second. All those in favor, or the vote's open? Vote. Aye and vote.
That's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any action after?
No, there will be
No action after. Yes.